I've gone through different ways in which I want to articulate my practice. Even being an artist doesn't satisfy me at all. My cultural identities don't satisfy me at all either, because it's not like my one experience can be defined by any of those things. I'm Indigo Gonzalez. I am an Afro-Indigenous printmaker and alchemist, and I also curate shows. I'm an educator. I kind of play in the different sense of visual media and sonic landscapes that kind of navigate my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. Alchemy, I always say, is like the queerest science, medicine, historical, anthropological study ever to exist, and it's cross-cultural. There's no one that can claim that practice. So typically those who practice this, whether it's for medicinal purposes or artistic purposes, are trying to find at the root what is the true form of something, break it down different components, put it back together and experiment. I come from this way of, if I need to speak, usually I need to actually create something visual to understand the vocal tension in my spirit. And so I'll write, and that's a way for me to draw, but when I sing, it's a way for me to paint. And so in that process, then I'm bringing all these mediums together to see what the actual sensation is that I'm feeling, because it's complex. Art is pretty fundamental to me. My dad did cartoons, and he also sang a lot, and so he was my nurturer growing up. And whenever I was going through some sort of a really intense emotional state, let's say, he would always bring out a Sharpie, a piece of paper, and he would doodle, and then say, color it. And so I didn't have to say anything, I just had to react accordingly to bring that kind of tension back down. And then I had this piece of what felt like my own understanding of my head on the page that my dad offered me. And he also used to read poetry to me. And so that kind of started to inform my landscape in my own mind of how can I map that out and actually have it be a conversation with someone else when I'm not sure how to communicate. I'll let my thoughts flow with the ink. And as they're kind of flowing with the ink, then I'm already doing that layering process based on my notes I already have, either they're written or they're drawn. Then I'll kind of see if there's something I want to work on based on these more flattened images, if I want to print them or have them be digitized in some way, if I'm using them as like a symbol on a piece. I want to hear like a trumpet line kind of start to bellow. And then have a sudden curve be maybe like a percussive moment. My favorite book ever is Frankenstein, shocker. Like that's my favorite book ever. Favorite movies are like the Alien franchise and that sense of what is the body and relationship and what's alien and what's, normalized. And in that way then, my ideal audience is someone who's really wanting to play with their psyche and someone who is trying to engage with their own embodied archive, but typically those who have no idea what is in there, they just know that they need to find it. And so, if you take the very basic thing of vitriol, which is alchemy, right? You start with lead to create gold. I'm trying to connect with those who are trying to find that mercurial gold, and I can kind of be that guide along the way. I'm trying to put together Chimaya Press, which is a small independent publishing press. It's really kind of my latch-stitch effort to try to do something and also be like, I have a lot of things, let me put it into one tiny thing for people to have and take with them. I have a sense of really intense intimacy when it comes to my artwork, also when it comes to my writing and even teaching, if it's historical art history, all the different, even philosophy. And I thought it'd be a much easier way, quote unquote, to try to have my own sense of a school and a classroom and have it be also independent so that I'm not trying to wait on someone else's decisions in order to have my work be in the world. So the press itself and Chimaya itself is this word that I came up with, and this idea of chi, breath, movement, but also that sense of what is your quintessence or who you are without your body. And then Maya comes from like Mayahuel, which is who like my patron when it comes to my ancestry, as well as Maya in terms of what it means to cut in Sanskrit. And so the idea of cutting through that air, that breath, then becomes this whole process of ink, paper, and some sort of expression is on a page, and that then becomes the press. So whatever is in the press, what I make, is informed by what I'm working on at that time. I love being from here in Columbus, Ohio, but a lot of my kinship are just like, can you please share your work to more people? And I don't like doing galleries. I don't like vending or doing like markets or anything like that. I'd much rather be a more one-to-one relationship or in a small group. I'd much rather create with others. So this is a way for me to create with others, but also perform. If I'm really honest, I want the press to be a temple. You know, I want it to be a sacred space. I'd want it to be a sacred site. I want it to be a concept. I'd be very disappointed as an ancestor if it's still a physical thing. I would much rather Chimaya press be the way in which you would engage with someone, you know, have that living praxis be that invitation. My hope is that maybe the different symbology that I've written or that I've created become kind of like petroglyphs around the world.